Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. My name is Joe Carr. Today's guest is Eileen Wisnewski, Director of PC's Center for Career Education and Professional Development. Eileen's work and that of her colleagues involves something critically important, helping PC students get started in their careers after graduation. It involves developing relationships with students and with employers and working to find the connections that satisfy both. Thank you for joining us today, Eileen. Nice to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's begin by talking a little bit about you and what brought you to PC and sort of the development of your career. How did you get into this line of work?
Well, sure. So I've actually been here at Providence College for 7 years. I'm a native Mainer. This was the first foray out of my home state. When people ask me about my career, I always want to give a little bit of highlights because as a career coach, it's interesting to look at the themes that people have with their careers, even though they may not seem that way. I actually started with a career in student affairs and ended up not doing that. So then I ended up in retail sales. I sold cars, I sold insurance, and then I finally was able to move back to my hometown and reached out to a friend of mine who was working at Bates College. And I said, so I know I can sell things. I know I can plan events. I know I want to be back in higher ed. If there's anything that you can think of, help me figure out what to do. And she said, well, we have an employer relations position here in our office in the Career Center. I regret to say that I had not ever even gone to my own Career Center when I was an undergraduate, but I quickly got the position and grew from there. And after 10 years of working at Bates, I did a little bit of working for a company called Experience, and that is a software provider for the systems that we use in the Career Center. That was a 3-year gig, and my husband got a job down at Salve Regina University, and so I followed him down here 3 years later, and the position of employer relations opened up here, and I have been happy to say that I've had a couple of roles here, and I've been in the director role for a little over a year now.
What does your husband do at Salve?
Oh, he is the director of the Center for Career Education down there. We keep it in the family, yes.
It's interesting. You're talking about sort of a 20-year time frame here, and you said you rarely or never went to your career center when you were an undergraduate. Neither did I. So this sounds familiar. But over the course of the past 20 years, these operations within colleges and universities have become much more significant, much more central to student affairs operations and to the college operations, haven't they?
Absolutely. And I hate to say that I've actually been doing career work for 20 years now. And when I first started, everything was paper, faxing. There was no technology. I think email might have just started, and we said, what is that email thing? And now everything.
It'll never last.
That URL, what is that? And we actually do everything by technology, and we're chipping away at everything that's been done manually, and it's becoming more and more all about the technology. In fact, I'm calling this summer the summer of innovation and technology, because we are in the process of holding our breath and trying to launch 4 new systems in about 3 short months. So, and we'll talk about that too. It's been very exciting.
Tell us generally about the Center for Career Education and Professional Development. What's sort of the mission? What does this unit do?
For me, I'll speak for me personally first. And what I like to say to students is that my role is to help you figure out who you are and who do you want to become, so that you live a life of meaning and purpose, whatever that meaning and purpose is defined as you. Our center, we really try to make sure that students are able to identify what they might be passionate about, what skills do they bring to the table, and is there a market for that? And if not, how can they maybe carve a market for that into the future? We'll
talk about that in the liberal arts context in just a minute, because that really seems to connect the mission to the college, the mission of the center to the college's mission. But what's sort of the range of services, if we can use that word, in a practical sense? What directly do you and your colleagues do when you interact with students?
We do everything from resume reviews. We plan major events. Our biggest marquee event is coming up in about a month and a half. It's our Fall Career Expo, where we have There's the employers and job fair piece. There's a graduate school fair piece. We also have combined a major minor fair piece. So students who might be first year students coming in undeclared or declared, because more and more students change their major while they're here, they can come in and speak to faculty and students, asking them about, why would I want to be a theology major? Why would I want to be in the business school? And we give free professional LinkedIn photos. What we really try, though, is there's a transactional piece to our work that we want to put on the back burner a little bit. And that is, people often think that we're just about resumes. You come in and you talk about the header and spelling errors and grammar and things like that. We really want, when you come in and see us, we sit down and we say, Joe, before we talk about this resume, who are you? Why are you here? Why did you pick that major? What do you want to do? And that's where we focus with our students. So checking a lot of boxes, we can help students who want to go to grad school, who are thinking about their major, looking at their LinkedIn and their brand. There's a lot of things that we can talk about, but it always has to start with that individual first, because everything else is showcasing that person.
That would seem to take us back to some of the skills you would have developed and other things that you did in your career, reading people, understanding how to communicate with them, and sort of getting beneath the surface and really identifying what makes them tick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It must be really interesting with college students, too, because they're exploring things and trying to find their way and probably changing their minds from time to time and just trying to make it work.
I agree. And what I try to do when a student sits down with me is I always start out, regardless, because sometimes they do come in and they feel like they have it all together. They know exactly what they want to do. And we all know that that path can change so quickly. And they don't necessarily see that coming because they haven't experienced it yet. What I do know, though, is that the student who's sitting in front of me, my analogy for them is that they have two backpacks. One, or book bag. One is filled with the books, so you can think about the weight of the books as you're walking across campus and going from class to class. The other one you can't see. It's invisible, and I say that it has stress rocks in it. So when I sit down, I go through that analogy and I say, are there any stress rocks for you while you're here? So a stress rock could be, I don't know what my major is. A stress rock could be, I'm really lonely here. I haven't met any friends. All of those things come together. And what I try to do with the students when I'm working with them is be able to identify what that stress looks like. How big is it? And can we take that out of the backpack so that you leave a little lighter? I have to say that I felt the greatest when an alum came and met with me a couple of years ago, and she came in and sat down and said, my stress rocks are huge in my backpack. And I said, oh, it's still stuck with you. And she says, yes, you've got to help me get them out. So it really does start with what are your needs? Because I don't know how to buy books could be a stress rock. And that is a different conversation than let's just jump into your resume.
You mentioned a moment ago some technology changes, some things that you and your colleagues are doing this summer to sort of turn things just a little bit with respect to the way the operation connects with students. What will be different? What's in the near-term future?
We are so excited because as my husband and I, we talk career, much to his dismay, I think more often than not. There's a revolution happening in our world right now where he referred to it back from the paper pencil day and the faxing and the overnighting of resumes to an online system that delivered it electronically. There has been the system that we used to call it e-fryers, and there are a handful of vendors out there. There's a new vendor that has probably been around 3 or so years now called Handshake, and they really speak to the student. They are no longer taking a job search platform or our operational platform on the back end to say, okay, it doesn't matter what that interface looks like for the students. This feels like Facebook and LinkedIn combined. So it's really hitting the students at what they've grown to know, as opposed to an older system that might as well be a typewriter, right? So with Handshake, we're getting ready to launch that to the students. So the students who are returning, it's going to blow their mind on a number of levels. First, when they log into their profile, when they complete their profile, now they're going to start getting feeds just like we're all used to doing. They can tailor what they want to see. So right now, my fake student wants an internship. So when I log into my homepage, it says, here are some sports internships. Here are internships in the major cities. So it's trying to, because I also said I wanted to live in Boston or New York. So the system is giving me the feed of things that are relevant to me. It also is going to a bigger portfolio style, so they can put in their courses, they can put in projects that they've worked at. Then they can make this visible to employers. So employers, when they're looking at it, they will be able to actually look at a student's portfolio as opposed to just getting a resume document. And that's where everything is starting to move. Secondly, we have a system called FriarLink, and that is our new alumni and student networking relationship building, mentoring, if you will, database. And again, this new system also provides that feed process for students. We did a soft launch to many of our students here last May before they left. And what I used that time was to try to, as I talked about the product to the students, see if they picked up and got, as a salesperson, right, to see if they were biting on any of the things that I was talking about. And the two things that I think are going to make this really successful for them is that, one, the first is that when they log in, immediately they see 3 smiling faces of PC alumni that the system is saying they're probably a good match, depending on what you put as a major, what you were looking for in a mentor, where you want to be, what courses you're taking. So right away they said, oh, that person is not only, they're coming into our system. It's not like they've been in LinkedIn forever. They're actually physically coming into the system. That made them feel more comfortable. And we forget how daunting this process is for a young person. They've been told their entire life, keep your profiles private. Don't request to connect to someone you don't know. And now we're saying, oh, let's flip this over. And you need to reach out to that person no matter how much you know them. So the other thing that I think was the most relevant for them is that, so they see these 3 people, they can click into them. Now they see Joe Carr. What did he do when he was at PC? What activities did he belong to? What was his major? What's his career? Most importantly, what is Joe willing to do to help PC students? So Joe has already gone in and said, I'd love to look at resumes. I'm willing to take a shadow. I would love to be a mentor. All the different things that we've set up. So when the students saw that screenshot, they gasped. I think that was giving them permission finally to say, Joe told me that he's willing to look at my resume, so maybe I'll feel more comfortable now and it's not so daunting. So we're really excited. We've been working for the last, I would say, 6 months or so to really build up the alumni component, because what we don't want is to really get the students coming in for the first time and have no alumni in there. So we're probably, I would say, around 800 or so alumni in the system. And then we're getting ready to later fall launch that. We can't launch everything at the same time. It's way too much. The third piece is we're just at the beginning stages, and this really, I think, is so revolutionary to me. It's a company called VMock. And what they do is they have a product that's an artificial intelligent resume reviewer. So the student will go to the site, upload their document. The document then analyzes their document. The system analyzes their document and then will give them a score indicator. So you are in the yellow zone, red, yellow, green. It could say you're in the red, but let me tell you why. It looks at things for typos, for over usage of words. So for example, in my career, students will use the word worked or assisted way too many times. So it will highlight everywhere they use that word and say, you might want to use this word instead. It looks at the strength of the bullet and lets them know, how strong is that? Is it leading with an action verb? So I came back from a Big East directors meeting and already knew that we had 3 other systems that we were getting ready to launch. And I went to my team and I said, I hope you don't kill me, but I think this thing is going to be amazing. And so I planted the seed with them, and then I waited, and they were all very quiet. The next thing I know, the entire room broke out talking, saying, can you imagine the type of conversations that we can now have with students? Do you know how much time that's going to save us? We are in this. We want to do this if we can. And we were really excited to have the green light. And this really is going to take that transactional piece away, where now the student comes in and they have a yellow to a green resume. We then can look at the content in there and how are they selling themselves? How are they marketing themselves, instead of you have an extra period here or there's a typo. The final thing, the final thing is that with our other part of our name, the professional skills, we are becoming a Microsoft certification school, launching that this fall. So students will be able to come in. We're starting to target Excel because that's a skill set that we know is really in demand.
Could you describe what that means, Eileen, to be a Microsoft certified school?
Sure, absolutely. So what it actually allows us to do is to certify students or even people from the outside if we move in that direction. So Salve Regina is actually one that I know of that's local. When they can go through this learning module that helps them to figure out where they need to be before they go and take that exam, we can provide the testing and the supervision that allows them to get certified.
Gotcha. Starting with Excel.
Yes, starting with Excel. And on top of that, we're putting together all kinds of other sessions that students can attend. So when we think about how this all came about, and this is probably another podcast in itself, we had seen a lot of data from NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, also Burning Glass, that were pointing to skills gaps that students, not necessarily students, the entry-level workers were having. So career centers are doing a great job getting students to the door, applying, interviewing, all of that. Once they hit, there are gaps in what they will be able to do. Give feedback, do presentations. Excel is a big need that students it's a use it or lose it skill. So they may have it here in CAB when they're in the early stages of the business school, but if they're not using Excel every single class, they're not going to be as competent as that they could be. So we did some surveying of our own, and we met with alumni. We talked to employers to see if they would agree, and they did. And so we broke it down into 4 areas. One is called professionalism and work ethic. One is teamwork and collaboration. A third is communication and influence. And the last is technology and analytics. And that's where we are working with 2 new systems, the testing system and the training system, to launch that in the fall.
You used the word daunting, I think it was, a few minutes ago, talking about the way this looks to a student when he or she is coming into the process. It seems like a lot of this is about removing those barriers, I think, at the Friar Link, and the way you describe that in particular, to see the pictures of people who have said, yes, this is what I'm willing to do. Stress rocks, I guess, are going away.
Stress rocks.
all the way through here. I'd like to just go back to that in a Friar network just for a moment. We talk about that a lot in other contexts too, working with alumni relations colleagues and others to create all kinds of connections. Do you find a particularly receptive group of people when you try to get these connections made and get the help that the alumni can provide?
Absolutely. I think that what this will do is provide the alumni out there and friends of PC who want to help students have an easier access to them. So they may be in LinkedIn and they might join PC groups. The students aren't necessarily, in my experience, they haven't been comfortable taking that next step and nudging them and say, can I reach out to you? Can we connect and talk about your career? The one thing that we found that was really exciting too, and this is actually in the process as we speak, when we talked to some of the younger alumni, they said, I want to use that too. Can I use that too? So we actually talked to the company and we turned on a new module, and we're working with the alumni relations department to provide young alum to alum mentoring as well. So they'll be happy.
That's terrific. We hear you and your colleagues tell students that they should come in early, that they should make these connections and begin to develop relationships with you and others not long after they begin their studies here. How important is that? How soon should a student engage the Department of the Career Education and Professional Development Center? How does that all work?
We say come in early and often. We are seeing and have seen a major change. And I have to say that for any alumni that are listening that might have used our services in the past, I can tell you that in my 7 years, this office has been a rocket ship, and we have taken off, and we are nowhere near what we were back then. We've really worked hard to be an elite office providing great service. And what some people will say, and I kind of smirk when I hear it, is when do I really need to get serious about this? And what I usually will say to that student, so if we put this in the context of a class, or for a working professional, a project, when you really get serious about something. So if you wait until the week before finals to start studying and you're cramming, that's not really a fun process, and you're probably not learning a lot. If you started when the assignment was given, it's a much smoother, easier, and able to absorb and learn process as opposed to trying to cram. So do we need every student coming in day one of their first year? No. Are there some students that should be in our office day one? Absolutely. And it depends on the competitive nature of their industry. Accounting, for example, finance is another. They really need to have an idea at the first year level of how are they really needing to make their path, as opposed to, I'm a senior, I would like to be on Wall Street. That's a really hard conversation to have, because did they join the proper clubs and orgs? Did they have a couple of internships? Have they demonstrated that they can compete at that level when it's really, really competitive? For someone who is coming in undeclared, we make the process easier to help them figure out what it is at that step. Everyone has their own steps. I never went to my career center, so I have to laugh at that part. But for an undeclared student, we can help them figure out what is the major. We're not going to talk about what are you doing for the rest of your life or what's next after PC. It's what's the next step for you here, and that's the major. So getting serious, freshman year, first year.
There's a lot of discussion about the marketability of liberal arts graduates. What's your perspective on that?
I think my career has been built upon working with liberal arts graduates. When I was at Bates College, we didn't have a school of business. I find those students the most fascinating because they really have the opportunity to do whatever it is that they want to do. The challenge sometimes is finding out what is that. And it really makes my job interesting and fun, because if Joe is a humanities major in my office, I may not have any idea where Joe will end up. One of my favorite stories, and I usually will tell this to students that are in the liberal arts school here, is that I once had a student who was studio art major who played lacrosse. She ended up on Wall Street, and now she's a consultant. So that doesn't necessarily make the connection. She had a fascination with sports and the competitive nature of that. With her art, she really wanted to give herself that 4 years to be able to do that, but that's not necessarily who she is and what she does for work.
It would seem like it must be satisfying when you have these great outcomes. What does that sort of feel like, and what kind of reaction do you get from students you've mentored for a while when they really end up with the kind of outcome that they had hoped for?
You know, it hasn't happened very often, but I will never forget the times when students have come to me and said, Eileen, I ran over here to tell you that I just got the job offer and now I need to go call my mom. So touching. I think that we have the ability to make major impacts on students' lives and help them to see that this process, as scary as it might seem and uncertain, that we can help them polish off what they already have. And I know, and I've actually I've done this for 20 years now. I used to say when I first got started, it's amazing because somebody that I help might save the world. And we know people that are saving the world. And it's really been a great career for me.
This is a street that runs two ways. We need to develop the students who are appealing to the employers, but the employers have to be interested in Providence College students too. How do you go about establishing those relationships, finding employers who might be interested in at least engaging with Providence College graduates to see if they might have a connection there?
That's a great question because it starts from my roots in employer relations, and we have an amazing group of people who do that work. It's very delicate because one small slip up, not of our own, could turn the employer away from recruiting at PC. So what we try to do is do an analysis of what are our students majoring in, what are we hearing from them that they need, and we can't do it all at once. So we take it at chunks. And when I first came here at PC, it was very important for us to start developing relationships in the financial services area because that was the big hole. So we really have done a great job, I think, there. And now we're focusing on healthcare and sciences. What happens, though, is we have one of our team members, Liz Lombard, she is our new business person. So whenever we don't have an established relationship, she's on the phone. She's telling them about our students. She's selling our product, the student product. What could happen, though, is that in the process, if a student no-shows for their interview, if they're not as prepared in their documents, if they renege on an offer, all of those things could say to the person, we're just not going to invest our time in PC anymore because we're not getting that product. So it's a very delicate dance that not only the employer relations people need to do in our office, but the entire team, because we need to make sure that the students know about the opportunities, that they apply, because they're looking at the numbers just like we do. They will say, how many people applied? How many accepted the interview? How many said yes? And how many stayed? That's all of their metrics that they're looking at. And it's fast-paced and fun, which is my favorite place to be, and exciting because it's like a sale. When you can get that new employer to come on board that wasn't here before, yes.
And then you have to keep working on that because it's very serious business for the employers, right? As you indicated, this needs to work efficiently, and they need to get what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And on their end, they do an analysis across the board. They know how many students that we hired from Providence College, how long did they stay here? And then also they look at their leadership. Who in leadership is from that school that might influence them looking at us? So there's a lot of factors that we can't control there too. Some could be that the recruiter who we had a great working relationship with is now gone and working at someplace else, and now someone else is coming in and they don't know us at all. So we have to start all over again. But that keeps things interesting.
Well, this rocket ship is not going to slow down anytime
It's not. It's not.
As people who pay attention to Providence College probably know, in a few weeks, the college will dedicate the first phase of the Ruane Fryer Development Center, and this is an athletics facility, which includes a basketball practice facility and lots of other really interesting things. But as this project continues, it will include an enhanced facility for the operation,
yes,
and a lot more possibilities for things to happen with the Center for Career Education and Professional Development. What will that mean to you and your colleagues? And more importantly, what will it mean to future students?
First and foremost, it means that the college is paying attention to the outcomes of the students. When incoming or prospective parents and students come to the school, they're looking at a number of things. One, athletics facilities, we know that. They also come in saying, what's the rate, what's the return here for me? So if I have my son or daughter coming, what's their success rate after PC? If they come in and they see a place in an old building and run down, it really kind of taints that image of what the school is. And I have known colleagues in institutions where they have amazing support from the administration and those who don't have any. And thankfully here at PC, we have more than the support that we would ever want. That also comes with a great spotlight, which we love being under. It's fantastic to keep proving ourselves. We are really on top of each other right now. We have a very small space. It's nice, but it's small. We're looking at the expansion. We're looking at the ability to have programming within our walls. We're looking to have a suits program that we don't know what that will look like yet, but for students who may not have the means to buy a suit, do we rent them? Do we give them away? Do we have donations? Not sure what that will look like. The visibility will be great. I think it will be the final piece that brings alumni and Slavin back together, the two different buildings. I think that will all unify that space. We are ready. We're ready. We're excited. I think that it will just continue the excitement that the college has been working on for many, many years with all the development we've had.
Well, it's awfully important work, and congratulations on all that is happening. We're with you, looking forward to seeing what will happen in the future. And by the way, the future is right in front of us because the academic year is about to begin, and lots of exciting things.
It's here. We can't wait. So. We can't wait.
Well, it's been fun to talk to you today, Eileen. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and maybe we can circle back sometime and catch up and do some more with you and some of your other colleagues in future podcasts.
That would be great.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. You can subscribe to the Providence College podcast at all the usual places, and they're available on the college's YouTube channel. Feedback is welcome at podcast@providence.edu. Thanks to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Joe Carr. Until next time.